today, a distinguished scientist, author, and professor at Jawaharlal Nehru University. Dr. Ranganathan's work covers a unique intersection of science, culture, and society. He is also the author of phenomenal books like The Rat Eater and The Hindus in Hindu Rashtra. Joining us as well is Ms. Swati Goel Sharma, a journalist who has passionately championed the voices of the marginalized communities. With nearly a decade of experience in leading publications, Ms. Sharma currently contributes to and co-founded Seva Nyaya Uttharan and Gems of Bollywood. May I now request Safia ma'am to join us on stage to felicitate our guest. We are delighted to welcome Ms. Advaita Kala, an acclaimed author, screenwriter, and columnist, known for her impactful screenplays such as Kahani and her popular novels Almost Single and Almost There. Ms. Kala's contributions to both Indian literature and cinema are widely admired. We welcome you, ma'am.
She also owns the cafe right now. Eponymous cafe called Kala. Is it? Yes.
Last but certainly not the least, we have with us the author of the evening, Mr. Abhijit Majumder. With nearly 30 years in journalism, Mr. Majumder is a seasoned editor and media entrepreneur. He is the co-founder and editor-in-chief of Earshot and the consulting editor at CNN News 18. Having held leadership roles in renowned media outlets, his deep understanding of political and cultural issues have earned him respected voice in today's media landscape. Thank you, sir. We request you to kindly take your seats. Thank you. Now I would like to invite Safia Kabir ma'am to for the welcome note.
A very good evening to all, the galaxy on the dais, esteemed guests, dear colleagues and friends. On behalf of Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts, I extend a very warm welcome to all of you gathered here today for right, powering the current civilizational revival. Colonization of IGNCA is on its way of outreach program through book releases, book launches, and panel discussions on regular basis. We received a number of proposals every month from the authors and publishers who wish to launch their publications on IGNCA platform. And I can proudly say that this increased number of proposals is definitely a true success story that shows how Kalanidhi, under the guidance of respected patrons like President Sir and Member Secretary Sir, gathering its place in academic circles. Now come to today's event. This book represents not just scholarly achievement but also the dedication and passion of its author. Thank you, sir. We are here to celebrate his contribution to our understanding and appreciation of the subject. As we embark on this journey on exploration and discussion, let us embrace the opportunity to engage with new ideas and insights. Thank you for being with us today, and I hope you find the event both inspiring and enlightening. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. I now request our author, Abhijit Majumder, to come forward and share a few words with us about his book. Sir, please.
Hi, hello everybody. Thanks for being here. It makes it very special for me. Uh, those on the stage, my very dear friends, and those who have come for the event. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming here, being part of this. This book took a pretty long time coming. It almost close to 5 years. It shouldn't usually. It doesn't take so much time. There are reasons for it. One of the reasons being that almost simultaneously I had embarked on a journey as an entrepreneur. We launched a startup with two. I launched a startup with two of my co-founders, one of whom is here, Gaurav Chaudhary, and it's been, yeah, it's been quite a journey since. Also, I joined as consulting editor for CNN News 18. So all that is one thing. The other reason was that this book was being published by Bloomsbury, and after paying me advance, after a year, more than a year, they suddenly said that they're not going to. I mean, they won't be able to quote unquote do justice to the book, so they're dropping it. I did not ask them any reason why they're doing it, but apparently it was because there was a fair bit of pressure from the UK India authors circuit. I am not going to name names, but there was pressure on them to drop books that were not ideologically aligned to them. So that made it a very compelling reason to finish the book. And Blue One Ink, particularly Praveen, who was earlier with Bloomsbury, and Praveen was kind enough to sort of publish the book, and I thank him for that. And why did I write this book? I think it's best explained by I'll just read out the extract from my opening of the book, which kind of states the reason I did this. It's the introduction, civilizational cyclone alert. Walking with bloodied feet through centuries of invasions and colonial rule, its tale twisted and retold by its oppressors, a civilization has decided to write its own story again. This is the story of that story. This book is about this slice of time in Bharat's life. Standing at the vanishing river island of this moment, it is hard to count exactly how many ways it is exceptional. Since the turn of this millennium, a series of events have unfolded and conditions have unrolled leading up to it. It is a simultaneous revolt and revival that this land, known for centuries as Bharat or Hind, long before India, has not witnessed since its freedom from British colonial rule in 1947. If one were to keep aside the epochal political goal of independence, the force of this civilizational resurgence could be the strongest in centuries. There is also a collective desire to move forward from the colonization of the Indian mind. This is how the book begins. And See, if anybody doubts how transformative, how crucial this moment is in the history of in the history of India, in the life of the nation, one just needs to go back about 15 years and think, what are the things that were unbelievable then, and which are now part of our lives. Kashmir, freeing Kashmir from the shackles of Article 370, 10, 15 years ago, it was really unthinkable. It may seem normal and, we can debate about it, whether good, bad, ugly, but it was, one would think that at best the government would tinker with Article 35A or something like that to just completely change that. Or it was unbelievable that Ram Mandir would be built at the place of Lord Ram's birth. It was unthinkable that 110 million toilets will be constructed. It was unthinkable that a Prime Minister would talk about sanitation, hygiene, cleanliness from the ramparts of the Red Fort. There's a lot of things I can go on and on. It was unthinkable that we would even talk about scrapping or amending the Waqf Act. It's draconian. It's not about Hindu or Muslim, and there has to be some kind of parity, some kind of equality in a nation. You cannot have an act where one just the Waqf guys can just say that this land, this auditorium belongs to Waqf. And then who do you go to if you disagree? You go to the same Waqf. Who decides whether it is Waqf or not? So I don't know, it was brought in to compensate for the, I think, fall of Babri Masjid. And so was the Places of Worship Act. But that's another story. So, even the shift of the Overton window on topics ranging from Mahatma Gandhi to instant triple talaq or anything, it's a, tectonic change that we have seen, we have witnessed in the last 10, 12, 15 years. It started probably, slightly earlier than the coming of Narendra Modi. And it has thrown up somebody like Narendra Modi. But this movement is particularly special. And and this book tries to capture that moment through the eyes of some of its protagonists. Many of them are extremely prominent, known faces, like people on the stage. Some of the people featured in this book. There are more than about 50 interviews and a fair bit of ground reporting from Northeast and places like that. So they are part of the book, and then there are several faceless people whom I could not name, should not have named, of course, could not name. They're just doing incredible work, facelessly, without any reward, as we know it, without any tangible material reward. So it was important to capture that, and this is not a book that captures one person's gyan. In fact, the uniqueness of the book is it's like a compilation of insights of so many extremely special, brilliant people. One can say that they're on one side, on the same side of history, but the way they look at things are very, very different. the way Sanjeev looks at this is very different from how Sai Deepak looks at it. Is very different from how Abhijit Mitra looks at it. Or so if I take you through some of the, just very briefly the book, we start with the new new Sangi, new species of Sangi, who's people who you would not associate with the right of center ideology in India, the Indic ideology, whatever. Youngsters, people who are just 20 somethings, and how they look at it, how they are some of the most articulate ambassadors of this movement. Then, of course, you have there is a whole chapter on law and constitution, where we have Sai Deepak to the LRO, which is fighting legal these things at the grassroots. Then you have history, the new Kurukshetra, which features Sanjeev, David Frawley, absolutely distinguished people like Meenakshi Jain, David Frawley, Sanjeev Sanyal, and even somebody like True Indology. He may not be a regular historian, or some of us don't even know fully who that person or this thing is. But I have his or her interview. He insists that it's his interview here in this book. Then we have Sanjeev again in the chapter on economics. We have Sanjeev, Harsh, Madhusudan, and others. We have this book talks about the narrative war, where we have Swati to Amit Malviya. I think Amit Malviya is the only political person I've featured in the book, because it was impossible to talk about the narrative war without talking about Amit Malviya. So there is Rahul Roshan, a lot of people like that. Vikram Sampath is featured in this book. Anupam Kher is featured in this book. Amish Tripathi is featured in this book. There's a whole chapter on the Northeast, and that personally I enjoyed the most, writing and reporting from there. Because what is happening is completely different from how we know Northeast as. Unless you go to those spaces, you cannot realize how people go about their mission. In Manipur, in the hills of Manipur, which are like really turbulent now. In Meghalaya, a missionary in a church working towards civilizational this thing. So then there is a chapter on the queer and conservative, as the West calls it. I mean, there is a whole alphabet soup, LGBTQ, IEA, what? IA+++. There you read, Abhijit is featured in that, but you also have voices like Mohit. You have a very unique voice like Deep Purkast, whose part I find particularly interesting, on how he brings India's past, India's mythology, history, everything, to say that who is the West to talk to us about gender fluidity. For us, gender fluidity doesn't mean silos of male, female, whatever, morning, one person, every person is gender fluid. One doesn't have to, go through gender corrective surgeries or something like that. I mean, so except when when it's medically needed. So then there is a whole chapter on minorities. I mean, the whole concept of minorities. First of all, I mean, the Constitution really did not define minorities in the with a religious lens. It was done post facto, and we have voices. This again is, shows you how if one is on social media, it shows you how the Overton window has shifted. So many voices from from among Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, especially Muslims and Christians, who are who are questioning the whole narrative that there is persecution and India has not sort of been their homeland. This thing they have been only persecuted and nothing else. So there are voices like Amana, there are voices like Asha Malik, voices like Sinu Joseph, and then finally on conflict, Garwapsi, conversions, the real war on the ground, because two really strong ideologies, an old world order is clashing with a new world order, which is very, very strong. The old idea of India, which has been mostly colonial. This thing has been challenged by this in this moment. So we have to. This book tells you that we are in the middle of Mahabharat. A Mahabharat is raging. And I have tried to approach this book as Sanjay, who's sitting there and trying to just narrate what is happening. The book is the target of audience of the book. The core target audience of the book is Dhritarashtra, or the many Dhritarashtres who still do not see but need to be told. So that is how I have seen myself. I am a journalist. I am not a domain expert like so many out here, out there. I can only do what I have been trained to do, which is just to report the truth, facts on the ground, and how others look at things. So happy reading this book. There are some, if at all, there are some very interesting anecdotes apart from their insights of, from each of the speakers on stage today. By the way, can you guess who won a breakdance championship in a city at some point of time? He's also a very, very accomplished swimmer, national level swimmer and athlete of the four. Can you guess? They, them. Gender fluidity. No, it's not Anand. Sanjeev once was the breakdance champion of Kolkata. That's part of the book, isn't it, Sanjeev? Or if you read about Anand's the love story of Anand's parents, it's just charming. It's delightful how they met, how they again they were his father is Tamilian and his mother is Punjabi, right? And you made sure that history is repeated. And
Those who do not learn from history are condemned to repeat.
Then Swati was once a very liberal kind of person. From there to her journey to reporting about issues that she reports, and also, I mean, how Gems of Bollywood, she started with Sanjeev Newar. That's also a fascinating story, and how Advaita, the nugget about how she sort of did not take up Amit Shah's job even after being offered it, because he didn't, also didn't like the boss. So all these nuggets are there. Happy reading. Please, make sure that you write back to me or send a text after you've read the book. And happy listening to some of the fantastic insights that are coming your way. Thank you so much. And I thank IGNCA for hosting this very kindly. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It's time for the moment we have all been eagerly awaiting. I kindly request Abhijit sir to officially launch the book, and I also invite all the dignitaries to unveil their copies placed on the table. Thank you all. We will now proceed with the panel discussion moderated by Ms. Advaita Kala. Thank you, ma'am.
We just have one mic?
Each one more.
Well, thank you everyone for being here this afternoon, and I apologize for my delay in arrival, but I was coming from another town, so took a little while. I'm forgiven. Thank you. Very, very interesting book. I enjoyed reading it thoroughly, and thank you, Abhijit, for including me in it. Although I think the tone wasn't deferential enough, but that's fine. We've discussed that already, yes, but appreciate it. But really fascinating, because I think so much of what we talk about and discuss is really the history of omissions, isn't it? So many things that have been omitted from our history, from our discourse, where people have been targeted for speaking in a certain way. I think that has been the so-called right-wing experience. The India's new right is fascinating. I mean, for one thing, on my way to IGNCA, it's been a while, I must admit, but I was expecting the sprawling campus, because that's where I've always been going. And then suddenly, I passed Kala Cafe, named after me, of course, like Anand pointed out. And I was like, where is this place? So I had to do another round and come back. And so this is part of the new India, isn't it, Abhijit? What do you think?
You're forgiven.
No, I'm talking about the new India. I'm asking you a question.
Sorry, are you saying that the layout of the IGNCA is a problem?
No, it's not a problem. See, don't qualify that with any sentiment. I'm saying what I've been used to was that sprawling campus in the middle of Delhi, right? Anand Ranganathan. But suddenly, even finding it, I was a little surprised to see it here.
Minimum.
The real New India would be when you change the name from Indira Gandhi to something else.
So the baby steps.
Every time, for example, I take a flight, I am reminded that history can be airbrushed and we can keep our monuments and institutions on dictators' names. So it's not quite New India.
Not quite new India. But the new right, has the new right arrived?
Look, we are in genuine danger of becoming like the people we used to mock not so long ago. Here we are on the stage being called dignitaries and launching a book in which we are named. Things could really deteriorate from here on.
Are we officially a cabal?
No, not until you storm Khan Market, but that you do it. That too.
That too. Okay, now back to the book. I want to ask each one of you, how do you define the right?
See, first of all, just like the left, let's start with the left. You see, we have left also means many things. There is the socialist left, there is the Nehruvian socialist left, there's the communist left, there's the woke left, there's the Islamist left, there's the anarchist left, and so over time, and by the way, many of these groups hate each other. So the jihadist left and the woke left, presumably, at least in theory, should hate each other, but they hang around in the same tent. Historically, for whatever reason, the non-left, or you can call it the right or whatever you wish to call it, has preferred to be much more in its own silos. For what reason, we can debate. But I think there is also various shades of the non-left. There is the economic free markets left, there is the economics free market right, there's the mercantilist right, there's the constitutionalist right, there's the cultural right of various shades. Some can be revivalist, some can be traditionalist on the cultural side, and so on and so forth. What has changed is, I think, despite all the Twitter battles, is that I think over time there is a greater sense on the non-left that, look, this too can be a large tent, especially since on balance we have far less murderous thoughts about each other. And yet, so far they never worked. And something that really began to change perhaps a little over a decade ago, and this is what this book really begins to capture, is that maybe because of social media or whatever, many of these groups began to cross-fertilize each other. Many of them were working in silos before. First of all, they began to cross-fertilize each other and coalesce into some network, which was simply not possible, because from after the 1960s onwards, the intellectual debate of India was only of various shades of left. The Nehruvian left arguing with the Marxist left, which created an illusion of debate, but in fact this was about broadly everything on the same side. The completely different ideas were never debated. And I think this is what began to shift, and many of the characters here were participants in this. It's not like every character in this book agrees with each other. What changed is that they began to finally notice that they had more in common with each other than they had in conflict. So I think that was a change. The other major change that the new right and the new part is that it's not like there was no Indian right thinking group before 15 years ago. But what had happened is that if you take, before independence, there was a galaxy of great Indian thinkers from the right. Swami Vivekananda, Sri Aurobindo, Jadunath Sarkar, R.C. Majumder, Tilak. So in fact, if any all our great thinkers belong to the right. You see this period where they completely kind of disappear in the 60s, 70s, 80s. And in the 80s, 90s, you begin to see some people begin to turn up and oppose it. That's the Arun Shourie, Swapan Dasgupta phase. Now, it was very brave of them to stand up to this monopoly. But in many ways, what they were doing was critiquing the main establishment. The real change that you see in the last 15 years is that it has shifted from a defensive critique phase to one where alternative narratives are also being offered. So you don't say, they didn't say it, right? What the left used to tell us, okay, if you don't like our books, write your own books or write your own movies. So what changed is that we began to give alternative narratives.
How important is power in this, the power dynamic?
Well, the dynamic changed before power changed. And in fact, I am a big believer that politics and economics are ultimately downstream of culture. So, yes, it feeds on itself if you are in power, but it is the case that the dynamic began to change before the power dynamics and economics of it changed. By the way, it's true of America as well. Joe Rogan happened before Trump came back to power.
He was a liberal. And an old school liberal is now what he would say.
No, whatever
But
it
he
is,
was
Elon,
not,
the
he's
point is,
shifted.
yeah, but he's part of the cultural shift. So what I'm trying to say is the culture shift, the response to the wokeism that happened in America, happened first, and then Trump too happened. Trump 1 was also, I would argue Trump 1 is the critique phase. There wasn't a coherent alternative. Whereas if we look at what he's doing right now, it's completely coherent. There is a completely coherent view about the kinds of policies he's coming. So I think they squeezed what we did over decades into a few years. But I think what this book is beginning to now document is this transition from the critique phase into the new right, which actually has increasingly clearly defined views.
All right. Anand Ranganathan, let's take this to you.
Okay, Anand.
Oh, Anand has his notes.
Oh, he has it.
You want 30 seconds or more?
No, not at all. First of all, thanks so much to the organizers, to the publishers, Praveen, and to the center for having this wonderful discussion amongst friends, and congratulations again to Abhijit for writing such a wonderful book, especially such an amazing chapter on me. No, but the question I think you asked, Sanjeev, Adwaita, perhaps you want to extend that to me, or yeah, okay, right, yeah, that's right. No, I mean, I wasn't very sure the question that you asked, so I'll just give my perspective on what Sanjeev said. Mostly what he said was absolutely right. In fact, everything that he said was right. I just have to add a little bit to that, because when he talked about personally, I think it's very difficult to define what is right. It's very easy to define what is left. A bunch of losers, no-hopers, complete failures in life, most illogical, irrational people. In matters of finance, it is easy to draw the distinction between left-wing, economics, whatever. That itself is an oxymoron. But socialists, you can say, and the other side is more sensible, logical, rational. So that is how I look at right and left. But as far as if one does indeed need to stick labels, then twice we've already kind of endowed on the so-called left this label, which is very complimentary of liberal. They are not liberal. We are more liberal than them. So, when I think Dada said Swati was liberal, she still is liberal. We are all liberal. You look at the so-called liberals, they are dictatorial. They're like goons and thugs. So, this liberal has been appropriated, this label has been appropriated, progressive, liberal. They're Islamists, jihadists, and let's call them for what they are. So that's as far as my definition of labels go. But if you were to really think about labeling someone, I label people according to whether they are social Darwinian or not. And on both spectrum, so-called left, so-called right, you would find people who want to thrust their views or their vision on others. And I think that is one label that should be dealt with. And that is what social Darwinian is, that you wrongly proscribe the notions of what theory of evolution is onto society. So for example, like Churchill did, he was delighted that Tasmania was emptied of its indigenous population because we had the weapons and we were the rulers, and it was our God-given right to annihilate the other population because you could do it, survival of the fittest. Without realizing that, half of Darwinian's theory also dealt with empathy and apathy, empathy and sympathy and cognitive associations and so many other things, not just survival of the fittest, and two things were completely undoable without each other. So the wrong notion, wrong inference of theory of evolution, when people take that forward, I would label them as social Darwinian or not. Coming back to this, And I think one aspect that comes out of Dada's book that should be emphasized. First of all, when Sanjeev said, look, he named so many luminaries that he associated with the right wing, Swami Vivekananda, Sir Jadunath Sarkar. I would say Lala Lajpat Rai would also be associated as a right winger. He talked of Ghar Wapsi, Hinduism. But people don't realize that all these people could equally be called left-wingers, because one of the biggest communist trade unions, CITU, that has a hammer and a sickle as a flag, was co-founded by Lala Lajpat Rai. And Bhagat Singh, who's considered as a communist, he basically gave his life for Lala Lajpat Rai. So it was a big muddle at that point of time.
Anand, you'd place Ambedkar on the left or right?
I think I would say science ki taraf se Ambedkar. Neither left nor right, but at the same time,
But
many of
Anand,
the...
that is an important question, because
Yeah.
if you look at what Ambedkar has written about Islam,
Yeah.
for example, he would, in today's PC world, would be called a radical right
Complete.
winger.
I mean, there would be Sar Tan Se Jida slogans on Ambedkar, and I'm not being facetious or flippant about it. Absolutely. I mean, the kind of things that he said, there are politicians who wouldn't say those things right now. Population exchange and all those things. So many. Just to as a tip. I think when readers finish this book, they will have one thought in their mind. Have we created, the thought that would jump out of readers' minds would be that have we created a right-wing ecosystem? And is it to kind of combat what we always thought was a left-wing ecosystem? Because the left actually had an ecosystem. To which, and this was, I was fiddling around with the phone because I wrote on this exactly 10 years ago, and I'll tell you why. Just take a couple of minutes. Because Aurangzeb Road, when it was renamed, it created a furore for about a month. And everyone, all the so-called the leftists, they went ballistic, and this is Hindutva Rashtra, and look what they've done, without realizing who the hell was Aurangzeb. I mean, the absolute barbarian and a mass murderer. In fact, there could be riots when I say this. There have been in Aurangabad. Somebody said Aurangzeb was a mass murderer, and the next day there were riots. And the wrong, it's not just reading, it's peddling of history. The guy demolished temples, perpetrated a genocide that killed 4.6 million Hindus, absolute barbarian. You have a road named after him. You rename that road on Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, who's an absolute hero to every Indian. And the left and the Congresses and Darbaris erupt in a protest unseen before. And what got my goat was this guy called Ramchandra Guha. And he said the road should not have been renamed on anyone else, particularly for God knows what, he was so factual. He said on Shivaji. No Delhi road needs a name of Shivaji, without even realizing that there already are 3 roads in Delhi that are named after Shivaji. But the leftists are very weak in facts checking, so that separate. He gave the reasons for why Shivaji does not deserve a road being named after him. And it was so preposterous. One of them was he's just a regional. So you had Bishop Marcos Road. Nobody the hell knows him. I had to check. He was of Cypriot and Bishop Marcos and God knows his name. But you can't have Shivaji Road because he was a regional hero. The guy birthed an empire from Peshawar to Plassey. And he said Shivaji was casteist, misogynist. You don't deserve a road. He's written all that. And then I realized that here is a guy who's a proud flag bearer of this ecosystem. They have propped this guy up as a landmark historian. The guy doesn't even know history. Whatever he knows is completely wrong. God forbid, would we become this, an ecosystem, would we create an ecosystem that would prop up such people, and we would hoist these guys on our shoulders, the Thapars and the Bhushans and the Guhas. Now, and I just tried to read what I wrote then, 10 years ago, in response to that. And this is what I wrote. And I think it's true, and I would like for all those who want an ecosystem to be built to realize that, right, we might have disagreements, we might fight, but that's a great thing because it mirrors Darwinian evolution. Ideas compete for each other. and then the best idea wins. And the left absolutely prohibits that. So the left does not mirror Darwinian evolution, it mirrors a small subset called quorum sensing of that, where they survive. To thrive, you need competition. So this is what I wrote. Ecosystems are tribes. Sooner or later, they demand their pound of flesh. Slowly, they sow seeds and ideas of brotherhood and dependence in an intellectual who has just joined them. And then begins the slide. We have seen it all too often. If India is to encourage the growth of intellectualism, it must understand that ecosystems as we know them are to be discouraged. It must understand the role of a patron. You can support a musician by organizing a concert for him, but you can't ask him to perform your creation. And that is what ecosystems do. They turn into herds and their members little lambs, afraid to speak their minds, fearful of the consequences, scared of the flow of cash or kind might ebb. Select intellectualism has been made jobless. What comes out of the mouth is now more important and worthy than from whose mouth it comes out from. The brilliance of a single tweet sometimes supersedes the worthiness of a tome. This is what science has taught us. Sparks and ideas too short to become a chapter, leave alone a book. From Darwin to Dirac, brevity is the soul of intellect. But those from the Jurassic age don't get it. They clamor for the Cretaceous age. They don't realize that India now has millions of intellectuals who critique and commend the world and people around us. They may be nameless or have names. They may be studying sociology or history or science or maths or engineering. It does not matter. What they say is what matters. Verbosity that confounds has been replaced by prose that conforms to 280 characters. So I think if at all I would want a message to come out and be in the mind of the reader after he's done with this book, is that let's just have, silos is a pretty strong word, but I think what he meant was right. We have people who have their ideas, we thrash out those ideas, maybe a little bit more heat than light sometimes, but I think that's a wonderful thing.
Okay, thank you, Anand. Swati, over to you. I think one of the reasons a book like this would not have been written 10 years ago would be it would be difficult to be identified as such, wouldn't it? Especially in a profession like yours, journalism.
That's true. See, I, first of all, because we're discussing what's a new right, I think of myself as somebody who likes to keep her ear on the ground. And in fact, I will read out what Abhijit has very graciously written about me. She ventures into spaces that even the boldest reporters have carefully sidestepped. And Swati is a stormtrooper in the neither word of politically incorrect truth. Thank you. See, the thing is, I like to question the labels and theories on the ground. This is what I like to do. This is what I'm determined to do. So when we give labels, and we people have defined right wing, people have labeled some people as right wing, even some people labeled as right wing have also tried to define what is right. So all that has happened. I personally like to check whether these labels, whether these theories are actually true on the ground, in reality, in practice. For instance, let's say right, generally अगर आप पढ़े इस टाइप के मतलब लेफ्ट लीनिंग पोर्टल जिनको बोलते हैं तो कहेंगे कि हिंदू नेशनलिज्म इज राइट हिंदू नेशनलिज्म कहकर फिर वो कहेंगे कि हिंदू नेशनलिज्म इज एक्चुअली हिंदू सुप्रीमिसिज्म which basically means only the Hindu religion is supreme and all other religions we want to decimate or we want to kind of convert. Is that really true? I'll come to that. Number two, they say the BJP is the right-wing party, so it's a Hindu nationalist party, so it's a Hindu supremacist party, and on and on. Is that true? So, let me give you an example. अभी मैं बहुत फ्रेशली मैंने भी पूरा केस कवर किया है मिशनरी एक्टिविटीज का, क्रिश्चियन कन्वर्जन का, मेरठ में, यहीं 80 किलोमीटर अवे. सो वहाँ पर एक अम्बेडकर कॉलोनी है, वहाँ पर 30 फैमिलीज कन्वर्ट हो चुकी हैं. और हुआ कैसे कि अगर उनकी फैमिली में कोई बीमार पड़ा तो किसी ने, कोई नन या उनके डोर स्टेप पर आया और कहा कि आप हमारी प्रार्थना सभा में आइए संडे को और फिर हम इलाज कराएंगे. तो वो लोग गए और क्या हुआ कि उनके अपने नर्सिंग होम्स और हॉस्पिटल्स रहते हैं. सो इलाज मान लीजिए कहीं कराया पर कह दिया कि ये तो प्रार्थना से हुआ है, बट देन दे सेड कि आपको हर संडे आना पड़ेगा. नाउ व्हेन दे स्टार्टेड अटेंडिंग दीज वीकली सर्विसेज, स्लोली दे सेड अब आपको ओम का लॉकेट भी हटाना पड़ेगा, अपने घर से वो भी हटानी पड़ेंगी हिंदू डेटीज, और आपको भजन भी चेंज करने पड़ेंगे, आपको सब कुछ मतलब इस तरीके से चेंज करना पड़ेगा। अभी बताइए कि अगर ये हुआ एक रिलीजियस ग्रुप जिसने ये किया है, नाउ इफ द पार्टी इज बीइंग डिफाइंड, द बीजेपी इज बीइंग डिफाइंड एज अ so called Hindu nationalism is equal to Hindu supremacism is equal to a religious party, पर पार्टी तो जब भी कोई फ्रीबीज या कोई भी एम्यूनिटीज किसी को दे रही है वो तो नहीं कह रही है कि आप हिंदू बन जाओ। लाइक बाय डेफिनेशन इट शुड हैव बीन ट्रू, राइट? आई मीन इफ एन ओपनली रिलीजियस ग्रुप इज डूइंग दैट कि हम आपका इलाज कराएंगे लेकिन आपको अपना रिलीजन छोड़ के हमारा अपनाना पड़ेगा, बट इज द पार्टी रियली डूइंग इट? आर द पार्टी वर्कर्स इवन आस्किंग पीपल टू डू इट? नो। So the thing is, I believe all these labels and all, I mean, I keep putting them to test. मुझसे पूछे तो right is not like Hindu nationalist. What is right, like the way it's defined, I think it's not true. It's not true on the ground. Generally speaking, a lot of these theories have can be questioned. Like when we came on the scene, when like people, a lot of people like us, not just me, so we questioned whether peaceful is really peaceful. We questioned whether the minority is really that scared, oppressed minority. We questioned a lot of such things, and that's how these anti-narratives, you know, which are narratives designed, developed by the so-called left or communist groups, have, you know, this is how we have combated it, because we have told them repeatedly through cases after cases, through real incidents after incidents, that what you say is actually not true. I'll give you one more example. अभी बहराइच में कुछ राइट्स टाइप का सिचुएशन था. A Hindu boy called Gopal Mishra has also died. I went to that village. Now 10 साल बीजेपी को यहाँ हो चुके हैं और योगी को भी कई साल वहाँ पे मतलब योगी आदित्यनाथ की गवर्नमेंट रह चुकी है, और ये कहा जाता, अभी तो ऐसा बताया जाता है कि the whole entire India is right and all the Hindus are like now radical Hindus, etc., etc. What I very surprisingly found on the ground was जिस गांव का गोपाल है, मंसूर समथिंग कोई गांव, मुझे याद नहीं है, वहां पर मुझे लोगों ने बताया कि पिछले साल तक वो सब तजिया में जाते थे, तजिया प्रोसेशन में, एंड देयर लॉट ऑफ पीपल वर एंग्री कि हमने दुर्गा पूजा प्रोसेशन निकाला तो मार दिया, सो बोले अब नहीं जाएंगे। सो आई सेड आप क्यों, मतलब क्यों जा रहे थे? तो दे सेड हम तो भाईचारे के लिए जाते हैं। सो सी दीज काइंड ऑफ इंसिडेंट्स आल्सो टेल यू दैट the spread of right or the spread of this, you know, is equal to Hindu nationalism is also very overhyped. Like अगर एक स्टेट में, जो कि उत्तर प्रदेश जैसे स्टेट में जहाँ पर इतने साल ये सरकार भी रह चुकी है, उसको इतना ये कहा जाता है कि तो पूरा सैफ्रनाइज्ड हो चुका है, उसमें पूरे गांव में ऐसा कोई सेंटिमेंट नहीं है कि हम तजिया नहीं जाएंगे। What does it mean? It basically means that all these labels and theories are very hyped. They are like really exist in, let's say, you know, these fancy circles, literary circles, coffee, you know, as they say, yeah.
Cafe society.
Yes,
but,
exactly.
You know, Swati,
but वो है नहीं, मतलब this is my understanding of it, because whenever I put any such theory or label to test, especially against the so-called right wing, I don't find the truth in it.
Yeah, I think we'll test one muscular theory of muscular Hindus. Let's see which one of you can open this gap. Pass it on. But Swati, I want to ask you, when your colleagues found out that you were moving in this direction, what has been your personal experience with the reactions?
Thank you for asking me this. One, in fact, मैं आपको एडवाइस भी देना चाहूँगी जो लोग यंग हैं यहाँ पर. आप अगर if you move yourself out of a place of hostility, you perform a lot better. So when I was in newspapers like Hindustan Times and Times of India, these are great organizations. I have nothing against them. But the team people I was working with, I faced a lot of hostility every day because of what I was writing, because of the issues I was picking. It was almost like कि आप स्टोरी करके आइए, फिर ऑफिस में आइए तो लोग आपको शक की निगाह से देख रहे हैं. ऐसा लग रहा था जैसे there are murmurs कि oh she's like the Hindu wadi in between us. I left that whole thing because it had become too liberal when I joined Scoop. थोड़ा मतलब अलग ही level का हो गया था. I just couldn't take it anymore, and an opportunity in Swarajya came by. Of course, you can't leave. I mean, organization like Scoop of Hindustan Times. अगर किसी ने organizations ऐसी नहीं खड़ी करी है जो एक opportunity दे रही है. But when I actually switched to Swarajya, it was like such a relief because you were no more seen with hostility. You were not discussed negatively. you were allowed to bloom. So I said that has been really good, and even in the big initial months when I joined Swaraja, a lot of people from my old organization who were quite pally with me, I think I'm quite likable, but they started trolling me, they started like,
Have you lost
and they
friends?
kind of attacked me in a gang, you know.
Have you lost friends?
I define friends as people who share my value system. So I would say they were never friends. And but yes, initially I used to get perturbed कि ऐसे मतलब मुझे बोल दिया मेरे साथ तो कॉफी पीते थे हम लोग तो कैंटीन जाते थे. But blocking is like a great thing on Twitter. I blocked all of them. And then I realized I have moved out another place of hostility, which is great. मतलब, you know, a physical office से निकले online space में वहाँ भी सबको block कर दिया. That was good. So I think yes. So this is how my experience has been.
What about you, Abhijit? I mean, to draw you into this conversation, you were, of course, editor of newspapers. I can't recall which one.
One of
Day to day.
Midday, then HT Delhi and NCR editions, and then Mail Today, and then Asianet News. We had this thing. But how people would talk about me when see, I would openly post about my views even before Modi came to power. I was, you know, I'm not somebody who's anyway. So and I was in HT then, which is owned by a Congress MP, Rajya Sabha MP backed by Congress. So every day, some of my colleagues would say, people who are senior in age and all that, have been in HT for a long time, they would say that, तेरा कल नौकरी जाएगा अभिजीत, हाँ ये मत कर, don't do this. So, but I, you know, still it went on. But you know, I've suffered a fair bit eventually in my career. But how people would talk to me, people who were like really otherwise didn't even know me. I think Deep, who's sitting there, the author of Blood Island, will tell you. You know, if at a party they would come up to him and you know, ask in a hush, is Abhijit your editor in Mail Today? He would say yes. So is he, as if like I have a highly contagious disease or something like that? I'm HIV positive or something like that. So they would, yeah, it was that's how it started becoming, right? Deep, I'll just take the mic to you.
Deep is in the book as well for those.
Deep isn't.
He's not?
No.
No? Shocking.
So one of the people who had problems with Abhijit's worldview was me. But I remember our midday days and HT days and also Mail Today days. But on something that I think both Anand and Sanjeev said, that you know, true liberalism is about accepting others' views, giving them space, having a debate, and then perhaps coming out with what's right. Abhijit was always this person. I remember we used to do Mail Today's front page together. Great days. Also perhaps why Mail Today shut eventually, but but I had a very different worldview from Abhijit's, and we would debate sometimes over political stories, and he would give it a very, very patient hearing. And there would be times when he would say, okay, no, you're right, so let's go with this. So he was always this person who was you know, was very liberal in the right sense of the word. However, the leveling that he's talking about started. That's a question I have for all of you, but later. But I think the way he was targeted in media, despite having a very glorious career in media, is something to sort of something to talk about maybe another day. That how somebody who was so accepting of every point of view, even points of view which did not agree with his, you know, was targeted by legacy media and, you know, some of our esteemed colleagues. So that's really, really sad. Thank you.
Sanjeev, I want to ask you this. You know, there is for someone like you who's at high tables, very serious policy conversations, things of that nature, doing, of course, your academic work as well as writing the history, exploring those aspects, how difficult has it been for you in a culture that is so driven by peer reviews and citations and being invited to the right places and to make your mark? How difficult has it been for you to navigate that?
Well, I've been luckier than. Is it working? I've been luckier than most in that, first of all, nobody who knew me even in the 80s, 1980s, would have been surprised with my views. So it was from somebody I came as a surprise. Even in Jyoti Basu's Kolkata, I was infamously right-wing breakdancer and had certain views which are not very different from the ones I have today. When I moved to Delhi, I was in Delhi University from 89 to 92, and I have live participated in that Sadhvi Ridambra speech in Boat Club. I was there when that speech happened. So first of all, one good thing is nobody was disappointed with me. Because I was always very clear about my views and had no problem expressing it. And anybody who knows my family knows we relish a fight. So in that sense, I already came with that image.
But it was baggage at that point, or
It was not baggage. As I told you, anybody who reads up anything about the Sanyal family will know that we like a fight. So, we wore it as a badge, that's how we are. Too bad we don't like it. Now, I had the advantage that I was on a scholarship then in Oxford, and then I joined a profession that had two things. One is, it doesn't care about your ideology. In general, people are right-wing in it, if anything, in financial markets, and it pays well. So, if you're doing well in that profession and making money, people don't care. If you get up in the morning and do Bharatnatyam, that's your thing in life, you do it. So I was in a profession that is much more is driven by an objective criteria. Can you help us make money? And in any case, people in financial markets type areas are not left wing; they're by and large still right in any case. So in that sense, I did not suffer what many of you may have suffered of being in an environment. So maybe when I was a teenager, I lived in an environment in Jyoti Basu's Kolkata where I was seen, in fact, as being somewhat crazy. But then, as I said, I wasn't apologetic about my views at that time, so there was no friend of mine who walked off later on in that sense. And then I was in a profession where, by and large, my views were not an issue. Even if somebody disagreed with me, that was not what I was being measured against. So it's really much later in life that I began to have to actually push back against something because when I began to enter into writing history and these kinds of things. By which point, the good news was that I was in a well-paying profession and I really didn't have to care about of getting grants and things like that. Remember, I'm not an academic. You mentioned I'm not an academic at all.
No,
I'm a financial markets guy.
But a scholar.
Yes,
sure.
but remember, without any need for grants or affiliations or anybody. I wrote my own books, I did my own research, I funded the whole
What about
thing.
the blog? Like if you went to someone and said, could
I initially had very few of them. Even if I got them, by the time, I wasn't dependent on any system. I was doing my own research, funding it myself, flying to those places myself, and publishing the books. And it happened to be the books did very, very well before the left got on to what the hell I was up to. And so I was already well known as an economist, and then I became well known as a writer before I began to see the true resistance build up. So I saw the resistance after I was already out there. And so
when did you feel it shift?
So really it's in the 2000s when I began to write these books. Actually, before writing the books, I was writing articles and things like that. And I've been in media stating my views for a long time. So you began to see people write, whatever, the caravans of the world will write 30-page article about me. So that happened much, much later in life, by which point I was in a position not to have to really suffer what, say, a Swati or Abhijit have to suffer. I was not living in a hostile environment where my salary depended on this. I really didn't care either which way. So this made my life in some ways much easier than may have been for the two of them. I was not living in a hostile environment. I was occasionally dipping into a hostile environment and stepping out of it. In any case, as I told you, I relish a fight. So in that environment, I would say in some ways, I had it much easier than the two of them would have had. Yes, there was resistance. People have written.
But that's the other thing, right? The so-called right doesn't do victimhood very well, no? Like the left.
Yeah.
The left.
We don't do
small thing
victimhood.
happen.
Yeah. So but I truly can't claim an initial struggle through
Make
life
it up.
and make it up. No, well, I have picked fights with various people when I was younger, but generally speaking, especially when I was younger, the general vibe I exuded in those days is, if you want to really pick a fight, I don't mind.
I think
I always had that
boss. Professional
MMA fighter.
MMA.
Yeah, so I maybe had that vibe. Generally speaking, I have that vibe. If you really want to wrestle to the ground, call me. So therefore, ironically, I didn't have to do it too often. So yes.
Smooth so far.
Yeah, so I would say yes. There is resistance. There are people talking behind my back, but I can't say I lost a large number of friends before that, because I always had these views. So anybody who wasn't able to accept what I was saying, so sure, there's some alumni WhatsApp group where maybe I'm unpopular.
Are you part of the group?
No, I'm in various WhatsApp groups of various purposes. Where people, college groups, this, that, the other. But nobody is wildly surprised by my views of the world. So in that sense, and as I said, since I don't really depend on anything, so I have had it easy. I have not said there's no resistance at all, or that I haven't had difficult moments. But I would say, compared to many other people who had to fight their way through the system, I did not have to do it in quite the same way. That maybe, as I said, Swati or...
No, I mean, speaking of hostile environments...
so I think maybe Anand may have an interesting one. Because I think
it's a natural segue.
He lives in non-hostile island within a very hostile ocean.
I'm afraid I think we've been passed a note that we need to wrap
This
it up.
is the most hostile things that
Censorship. In 30 seconds, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, tell us about your hostile environment. I mean, I know there's incidents when you can't even go to your lab.
Yeah, once that has happened, yeah. But I think, I'd much rather kind of echo what Swati said when you asked her the question about, have you lost friends? And as she correctly said, those weren't true friends. I mean, if you lose a friend, then that person was never a friend. But I'd like to go a bit further than that. A leftist can never be your true friend. It is a fact of life.
Why?
Because they are so embarrassed at being wrong, failures in life. Their ideology has been junked around the world and they still adhere to it. Somebody who says communism is still good, when all around the world for the last 100 years you've seen evidence that whichever nation has espoused it has been destroyed. And you tell that person, look, you might be my mate, but this is a fact, look around you, and this is just bullshit. And the guy would be so bitter, hanging on to that. Che Guevara t-shirts, and I mean, you're all right when you're 17, 18, you're all right. It's like, rites of passage. But for you to be 40, 50, 60, 70, espousing the same philosophy, you have to be so bitter and complete washout that you can't be friends. You can't be. So I just thought I'll use that 30 seconds to tell this as almost like an axiom. So there is Darwin's theory of evolution axiom. The another axiom is a leftist can never be your true friend.
So they're cool in their 20s, and by the time you hit 50, you're just like, what a loser.
Complete
Yeah.
failures in life. Yeah. In fact, you should celebrate if you've lost a friend who's a lefty. Yeah.
Yes, we're running out of time, so I think.
Yeah.
What do we have to
should
do
run
next?
out also.
Why?
But I'm just saying,
Who's
the
next
leftist
on
cannot be a
stage?
friend, but a leftist can be your father. Which is my hard leftist.
That's the
So-
Nehruvian generation, though.
Yeah, no,
they were like completely brainwashed.
That is,
on
but
Nehru.
maybe he's an exception. But I've learned this entire. I have written about it in my acknowledgements that I have from him. I have learned learned how to listen across chasms, speak across chasms. He's a very and he's a most happy, not a bitter man at all. But he was not a fashionable leftist. He was far left. He was not a fashionable Naxal. He was part of the Intel group of Charu Majumdar in the 70s. So it's like, and he doesn't like Modi at all. So where do I begin?
But how come in India it's so easy for the Nehruvians and the
My
Marxists to kind of swap ideologies, swap ideas?
Huh?
Nehruvians and Marxists in India, they're very interchangeable, very comfortable.
No, as Sanjeev said, that there is a complete range out there. There's a complete range out there. I mean, Nehruvians, Marxists, there's that. Left is not monolithic by any this thing. But yes, the thing is that, my ending note would be, see, I've been at the receiving end of some of the most high profile, hostile hit jobs in the last few years, starting from Kejriwal. Actually, I'm probably the only journalist for whom a letter went on the official CM's letterhead to the promoter of the media house that please sack him.
We framed it?
No, that was from Kejriwal.
I said you should frame it.
It was reported about. Then there was this, Congress sent a completely innocuous article, which, I'm really surprised that they even read it. They sent a legal notice. Then 4 Chennai cops land up in Noida, trying to, because there is a FIR by Udayanidhi Stalin because,
Yes,
because of my
recently.
this thing.
This was recent.
Yeah, and then Mamta
Didi
blocked
also,
my
yeah.
phone, of this thing, her police complained to Airtel that fraud activities are going on. From my
And she's
phone.
a real liberal,
So
sweetheart. Yeah.
the thing is, this is, if we think that we have arrived and all that, I don't think anybody, or none of us here, fortunately, I don't think we have done what we have done, said what we have said, do what we do, because, we want to sort of arrive or whatever.
No, but right now we have Rahul Gandhi moving from Nehruvian to
So,
Marxist.
India's
So-
new right is, it's a process, and this is very much being targeted, will be very much part of the process.
Swati wants to say something.
See, this book, I think, is proof that whatever negative definitions are given to this label right, how it's defined, are patently false. Because, see, for instance, like let's say Anand, I've known him for several years now. Now, does he come across, like, do I know him as this, supremacist, religious supremacist, rabid, or intolerant guy? Not at all. Like, it's quite the opposite. Which means he doesn't live up to that label which is given to him. Right is equal to supremacist. So this whole book profiles a lot of people like him, like me. And if you read, we do not come across as, those, again, like those negative labels attached to us. So I think this is like it serves a great purpose because it tells you that the labeling and the definition is actually wrong.
Do you want me to wrap up, right? That's what, yes. So I guess any questions from the audience? We should just open it up a bit before we close. Anyone has any questions? Literally no one. Okay, one person. You can just speak loudly because by the time the mic gets to you, it'll be forever. So.
Hello, I'm a student from IGNCA. I'm from Kolkata. So there is a.
Who's your question for?
My question is for Abhijit sir and Sandeep.
Okay.
So in Kolkata, it's cool to be leftist. Okay. The most of my friends, I'm 21 years old. So most of my friends are joining left or portraying themselves as left because.
What did I say?
And the most important thing is that who tell themselves liberal, they are not liberal. They are not they are not listening to anyone. That's the main problem. I mean, the rightists are listening to everyone, but they are not ready to listen to anyone, anything.
Just learn breakdance, right?
See, those clowns were there when I was young also. But the difference that I now see, if everywhere outside of Kolkata now, is that the average Indian university is no longer dominated by the left. First of all, in the old days, there were always a loud leftist group who dominated. It's not like everybody was leftist. Even in JNU, it was a small group that was very loud. But today, I would say I now speak in so many universities. I'm even a chancellor of a university. It happens to be that India is actually the mood in average Indian academic universities, etc., is far less left than that is in most Western universities. If anything, the average student, yeah, one or two will be there. Even in Ashoka, by the way, there is, I would say even there it's a very small number who are very vocal, but the general student is not. In fact, at the height of all those, the Tukde agitations in JNU, I gave a talk to a packed hall and with no problem at all. So the point I'm making is that Indian universities are not that left. There is, however, Kolkata still seems to have somewhat of a grip of this, but even this is breaking down. Just to give you some sense of this, there are now enough of these anti-left, right, or whatever you may call it, people who have got, there's one young guy, forget his name off the top of my mind, but he runs a podcast called College Street, Kolkata. So he, for example, he has taken many of my short stories and actually read them out while explaining them and in a dramatized way. And he's got thousands of people from that city listening to it. I mean, point I'm making is that the so-called resistance now exists, which may not have, I mean, when I was growing up, I was in that sense quite alone. But this is not the case today. There are, even in Kolkata, significant groups of young men and women who clearly now are anti-left.
And who don't want to be in college at 40.
Who don't want to be in college at 40 and will mock that left look, that particular jhola chhap look. So even in Kolkata, I can now begin to see the drift is there. And yes, one of the problems the right has is it has not historically invested in being cool.
Yeah. There's an image problem.
But I think that too is changing.
Okay, last question because we have to leave. Okay, we have to leave. All right.
Over tea.
Okay, we've got to move. Sorry. We'll do it over tea. Thank you so much. We'll do it outside.
Thank you so much.